You know, every time I think Fenech, I think of Jeff Fenech. And I keep going to call you Jeff.
That's all right. That's okay.
I'm trying to remember, was he a boxer?
Yeah.
He was a boxer.
One of Australia's best.
Related?
I don't think, maybe distantly. So it's a Maltese name. Fenech is from Malta. My dad's from Malta.
Right.
Immigrated here when he was 6. But there's so many Fenechs over there, they kind of go by clans. So maybe we are. I'm not sure. I've never really tried to chase it. Yeah.
No, well, there you go.
Yep.
So all that aside, you're watching the Australian Guitar Show. This is Aaron of Fenech Guitars up here in Miami, which great spot, man.
It is a good spot.
We landed this morning and literally just started looking at property. I just thought let's move in here,
mate. I have to pinch myself some days.
Yeah.
It's I live about 600 meters down the road. I surf 400 meters that way.
Yeah.
So it's great. And as I said, we just did the Melbourne Guitar Show where we ran into each other. And no offense to people in Melbourne, but the weather would just drive me nuts.
Well, I think I can totally relate to that. I mean, I've lived in Hong Kong and a few other places where you get that heat and humidity, and some people hate it, and I get it. But you know, it is nice, and I've also lived in the snow, so both. Yep. I think that what I understand though is some Melbourneites would probably struggle moving here because of coffee.
Yep.
I've not heard of great coffees up here.
I think it's changed. I actually found the opposite.
Oh, good.
My problem in Melbourne was nowhere opens before 8 o'clock.
Right.
So I was a silly Queenslander walking around in a pair of shorts and shirt at 6 a.m. in the morning going, everything's closed.
Yeah.
And I ran into this I found a little...
Well, that's because not many people surf there, right? So
no.
You get your surfers and your fishermen, you got the beach lifestyle. Everyone's up early to go catch fish or surf.
All the coffee shops across the road are open at 5 or 5:30.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So, and you'll see everybody out, but it's dark. So I was walking around, because we stayed in St Kilda, found this little French patisserie thing and said to the lady, it was 7 in the morning, I was like, is anywhere open early? And she looks at me with this horrified look on her face and she says, it is early. I'm like, mate, it's smoko.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So what do you think of the show?
I had a ball. Yeah. So that was our first ever guitar show. Despite lots of people sort of saying, why aren't you doing guitar shows? And we've just been very busy focusing on, building the guitars that I want to build and make. And then I always knew I'd stick my head up at some point. And as I said, we finished the bottom renovation because the workshop's just doubled in size and I had 4 weeks. So I thought, why not make a dozen guitars in 4 weeks and get them down to the show? It was excellent. The response we had was fantastic.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing that you built that amount of guitars in that amount of time for, because you're essentially a 2-man operation?
And my wife. So
sorry.
Yeah. So I've got Rob, who's like our shop hand, does kind of sanding and things like that. And we're training him to do other things as well. And then my wife, Stacey, she's here during school hours. Pretty much does everything in between, from marketing through to designing stuff in AutoCAD. When as I said before, I still do things old school, but then when we need to make a jig more professionally, we'll use the CNC machine to make that, and so that's her kind of domain. So all the pieces really at this point can't really operate without each other. But I still build the guitars. So what used to take me, these acoustic guitars, probably 5 years ago would take 100 hours per guitar. I've got that down to, depending on what it is and how many inlays and things like that, might be at 50 hours, some might be at about 25 hours. So there's still a lot of hours involved. But yeah, they were long nights before the show. So I was doing probably 14-hour days. I think the last 2 weeks I did set like 2 weeks straight. So...
I mean, that's a massive effort. So was that based on, was that when you decided you'd go to the show?
Yeah, well, I'd always planned to. So we've got some clear goals that we want to achieve, and that sort of goes right through to getting to NAMM as well eventually. And I thought, geez, it'd be nice to exhibit at the Melbourne Guitar Show and let Australia know that we're here, we're a viable option. And I started like any other sort of guitar maker. I'm sort of been at this around 10 years now, and I was making, repairing guitars at home in my spare time, and then 6 guitars turned into 10 guitars, and I was like, okay, well, I'm getting better at this. The guitars were getting better. The feedback I was getting from players was that they were getting better. But it's really hard to transition from 10 guitars a year while you're working full time. So then I came up with the thing about teaching people how to make guitars. So we started the guitar making school, and I ran that part-time while I was still working full-time in a previous profession, and then woke up one day and went, that's it, I've got to take the leap of faith. So quit the full-time job. The school became half of my time, and then guitar production became the second half. And then in the last 12 months, I've made the decision to almost phase out of the school. So we still do a couple of 2-week courses a year. And again, that's a scary thing too, because you drop that income that you get from that.
It's the bread and butter.
That's the bread and butter, yeah. And then something has to give in that equation. There's 2,000 workable hours in a year, and so when you multiply that around what you can do and what you can make, and then of course there's the influx of equity and money that you need to. It's tough, you start with a small bandsaw and then you need a bigger bandsaw, and then. But I've been really fortunate that lots of local people have supported me in terms of be it, getting involved with these guys in this space and their support with watching our business grow and supporting us any way they can. Through that, local musicians, loving my guitars and getting on them, playing them, tagging us, supporting us, and then that's sort of slowly extended out. And Melbourne really is that first sort of jump. We've got some dealers now that have come on that are selling our guitars, which was a big leap of...
Down in Melbourne?
In Queensland. It was a big leap of faith for them as well, like Guitar Brothers in Brisbane, and more recently the shop at Malulabar as well, so Malulabar Music. And both times that's been a bit of a, I take up half a dozen guitars and, take Craig from Guitar Brothers, he sat and played all of them and spoke to me about, pricing and all these sort of things. And then he bought the stock on the spot, which was that's not lost on me. So that's, and my job doesn't end there either. I'm acutely aware of that they've invested in us to sell that product. And so we're trying to support them as much as possible by doing things like going to the Melbourne Guitar Show. So that was quite a costly exercise. We did 2 booths and I drove, 15 guitars down and displays and guitar stands and banners and, all these things. But ultimately that's about supporting those people as well. So, and the response that we had was amazing.
Well, I didn't get a chance to really talk to you. I mean, we had a quick chat.
Yep.
But I didn't even get a chance to interview you as like I would have liked to on the day.
Yep.
But I was very respectful of everybody's time during the day, and I was blessed that a few guys just had enough of a gap from customers to give me a moment. But there was you amongst others that just didn't have a gap, man. You were your stand was just on, and it just seemed to be on non-stop.
Yeah, well, no complaints from me. I was thrilled to have, and the feedback we got was excellent. I'd sort of listen to people walking past and Fenech Guitars, they're American, and then they'd read Gold Coast Australia and they go, oh, these guys are Australian, And people would come in, and then other people walking up going, mate, we'll follow you on Instagram. Like, I love your guitars. I've always wanted to play one. Can I play one? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And we sold some guitars and we got orders for guitars, but I didn't really get into it. Like, that wasn't my goal. It's great to sell guitars. My business is to sell guitars, but it was more that people got to experience what I'm trying to do with guitars as well, which is keep that handmade focus, get that quality, but be probably a little bit more consistent than you can be when you're building 6 random custom guitars for 6 people. So we've developed a small kind of exclusive range of guitars. And up until now, most of my builds have been, $5,000 plus. So between sort of $5,000 and $7,000. Not everyone's got that money, and that's a lot of money. So the feedback that we've been getting from some of the stores that have got our guitars is, could you broaden the range a little bit? They don't want cheap guitars. The world doesn't need any more cheap guitars. And I can't manufacture them under a certain price point. We can't. For the amount of hours it takes, the way that I make them. So we think we're going to be able to do one at around about the $3,000 mark, and then one at $4,000, and then back into the top end stuff. So that was the launch of that basically. The reception was, these guitars are amazing for that money. So all Australian timbers, all solid, but individually voiced, as I explained sort of earlier. There's an approach to guitar making which is thickness, sand everything the same, and cut every brace the same, and do everything the same, which works for larger guitar companies and they sell guitars. But to get the very best out of them, it's pure physics. That no two trees are the same. So if you want to really try and control those tonal features and get the best that you can out of those guitars, you have to treat them individually.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the whole idea of being able to, some people agreed $3,000 for something was
a lot of money. It's a lot of money to
money. Yeah. It is for me. To be able to, you could go and buy a $3,000 off the shelf guitar from any brand from all around the world.
Yep.
And it's going to be a nice guitar, exactly like you're saying. But having walked around and seen how you build and know that you put the same level of commitment into that $3,000 guitar that you would into a $7,000 or $10,000, $12,000, $20,000 guitar.
Yep.
That is something quite different, because you're not all of a sudden palming it off to, here's a couple of tradies, or here's a couple of. You're still there, hands-on, doing it, building it yourself.
That's right.
That's a pretty special quality.
Yeah, there's some real critical aspects to guitars, and so we talk about backs and sides, and Brazilian rosewood this, and Indian rosewood that, and but the heart and soul of an instrument, make no mistake, is the soundboard, and unless you get that part right, and that's the bit where my science background kicks in, and why I was always quite fascinated about guitars in a sense. That if you get the mathematics and the physics right and you treat those guitars individually, you can control and shift things quite accurately. So the main fundamental, the air resonance, all of those things which you can measure, and I spreadsheeted for years. I was a bit of a nerd with that stuff. But I don't do that anymore because my ear is now accustomed to
what you're doing.
Yes, understanding that that's that frequency range. So I can have Rob sanding sides because it's not a critical task. But when it comes to voicing and shaping I'm pointing to the braces on the roof.
I'll take a photo of what's on the roof so that people can actually see what you're talking about.
I told people I was going to put a giant soundboard on the roof, and my wife looked at me and went, "You're nuts." But so when it comes to shaping and scalloping those bars, it's the dark art of lutherie. But basically, what I'm doing is controlling mass, so loose and stiff. And you'll hear guitar makers talk about the sides of a soundboard as treble and bass. Loosely, it's defined as treble and bass, but there's lots of other parameters that control that. And then from there, it's how stiff you make the sides, and it's the timbers that you use, and the depth of the body, and all these little things add up. But the heart and soul, if you want to really keep quality in the guitar, tonally, because then there's finishing as well and playability, is making sure that the tops are voiced correctly. And you can't fast track that. You can't CNC every brace the same. You can, but you end up with quite a mix and a range of sort of tonal, like a tonal palette. It broadens. You'll play a great guitar one day and a shit guitar the next day.
Well, and how many people I've spoken to over the years, because I ran guitar stores, and I'd always say to them, look, if you want to buy a Strat or whatever, you could try 10 of them. One will be great, 9 won't. But then again, someone else might walk in and try the other 9 and find another one that was great for them. Because we are all individuals, which is the beauty of it.
Yeah. And tone's subjective too.
It is, yeah. So that's the joy of it, is that it's not just about what you're creating from each individual guitar, it's then that individual that connects with that instrument.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me personally, it's about that connection with an instrument. And quite often, when it comes to owning local or luthier-made guitars, it becomes a bond with that creator of the instrument. That's what I've really enjoyed with the few guitars that I've got. I've sold off a lot of my guitars that I've owned simply because I thought, no, I want to invest into owning some really nice Australian-made guitars. And that means running that risk of buying something it is about it being for me. So I've taken time to connect with that. But the bond that I've created, that has happened with the builders of those guitars, is fantastic as well, because a friendship is created. It's not because their heart and soul is in that instrument as much as mine is. From a different point. I'm there to create on it. They're there to create it.
That's right.
And it is really special versus just another guitar out of a box that 3,000 were made that day. And look, I guess we're trying to. So there's lots of people have always tried to put me in this thing as you're an artisan and you do all these things, and
I've never actually wanted to be the guy who makes 10 guitars a year. That's never been my focus. I was honing my craft and my skills so that I could make, I don't want to make 10,000 and I don't even want to make 1,000. I don't know what that number is. It's probably a couple of hundred. We make less than 100 now, but it's, I think, kind of a little bit more broader than that. So it's about making sure that whoever works for me is really happy and well looked after, and that we've got a really cool group of people that make a small number of guitars, and that we actually do keep that sort of knowledge as much as we can around who buys them, where they go. All their guitars are numbered, serialed, and you lose that if you go too big. And it's not really, I mean, if I wanted to make lots of money, I probably wouldn't have chosen guitar making. Yeah,
music, just anything with music.
Anything to do with music.
It's the only industry in the world that literally hasn't moved with the pay scale of everything else.
No. So people sort of say to me, well, why do it? And it's like, well, you know, it's a creative outlet. And I just love what I do, mate. Like, compared to what I used to do and chose to do professionally, you know, after I did my science degree, it was, you know, I drove a desk, basically, looking at reports and those type of things. But there's not enough hours in the day for me now. I hate it when the sun goes down. I'm excited for the sun to come up. And every day I get to come in and create something that will end up in the hands of someone, a musician that writes a hit song or doesn't write a hit song, sits down and plays some Creedence by the barbecue. Like, excellent. And that's a real full circle moment. And it's not lost on me. And I sort of try to say that my wife and I talk about it all the time, whether it's this guitar that we're focusing on now for, you know, sort of a more affordable option, around about $3,000, is that as much love's got to go into that as it does the other guitars. And so we're really quite, you know, sort of aware of that as well. And we're able to do it by, you know, stripping out some of the, you know, not using as expensive timbers as, you know, the other ones that we just chuck, you know, everything out, all the bells and whistles. But, you know, you pull out some of the purfling work and the inlay work, and basically it's man hours. You get the man hours down, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, we can probably do this for around about that sort of dollar mark. But it's still a lot of money, you know.
What I absolutely love hearing is that your passion is genuine. You know, like it is completely genuine, and I think that is something that I think that shines through in everything too. That you don't. I mean, anybody can make a Instagram page look great, right? It's very easy, especially me, because I'm just sharing other people's great work most of the time. You know, so it's very easy for me to go, that's amazing, I love it. But I am drawn more so to, when I'm looking at things, I'm really drawn to people who are clearly passionate about what they're doing. And I could see that from what from just your posts and your website and little bits of footage I'd seen. And to meet you in the flesh and hear that, I mean, it just reinforced what I already know, you know. And I think
thank you.
People get that. People see that. They see genuine. They see honesty. They see integrity. And that shines through in every guitar you've built. We've taken a wander through your acoustic world, and it does lead to sitting in front of these beautiful Bentleys.
They are. They're time-consuming little guys, but but mate,
that's my segue.
Well, you're right. I mean, I'm stoked. I mean, I go to sleep thinking about how to make guitars better, and you know, my wife and I had this conversation this morning as we were getting the kids ready to go to school. She's like, "Oh my God, all I did last night was design pick guards." In her mind, like, so we're constant, and it's because we get this ability to be able to create something, and you feel like that's my surname and the headstock of that guitar. I take that very seriously. I'm horrified if, you know, a screw goes loose or something happens on that guitar, because it's an extension of yourself. And I think when you get to a point, no matter what you're doing, whether it's guitars or, you know, selling shoes or whatever it is, where you've lost that, it's time to get out. Because you've lost that drive and that passion to do it. But segue. The Bentleys.
I had seen pictures of them, of course, like anybody, you know, anybody who follows your socials would have. And there's this cool old school 50s Sears Roebuck kind of silver tone kind of.
We get all of that.
It's like all these little things rolled into one, and then with this big flare of originality thrown on top.
It's come about exactly from those brands. So I had a guy in yesterday going, "Oh, is it Rickenbacker?" And so I, like anyone else, you know, I had, you know, Gibsons and I had Stratocasters and I had all these sort of guitars, and they're all great guitars, but there was always things I didn't like or really liked. You know, I don't know, but my Gibson, it's amazing to look at. It's a dog to play. It never stays in tune. It's 17-degree headstock angle, all those issues. And so I kind of thought, well, and being a guitar tech as well, people are constantly coming to me and going, I've got this amazing guitar I just paid $5,000 for. Now can you go and put things on it that keep it in tune? Or can you give me some decent pickups? Or can you give me decent wiring? So I was like, well, why not just try to approach this as I'll throw the kitchen sink at it and put all the things that I think are really important on a guitar. But yeah, the look and the vibe of it, I love Dan Electros. I love that 50s look. There was an old Maton that was kind of inspired one half, and that half's sort of inspired almost a little bit like Gretsch's and the Cat's Eye, and then the bottom is, you know, I sat there just drawing curves, and the bottom shape came from one of my acoustics. So there was all this meld of things, and then, you know, I wanted an ebony fingerboard. I wanted a really nice sort of, that's all hand done, so, you know, when your hand slides down, it gives you a little bit of upper fret comfortability. I had one of these Gibson models that was a Midtown, a Gibson Midtown. I've still got a custom. And so that's primarily where the idea came from. That was a mahogany body that, so I'll talk about the construction of this. And this comes back to that, before we even talk about pickups and things, I was trialling timbers. And the body on this, we use Brazilian mahogany, which is plantation grown now, or Queensland maple. They're very similar in terms of density. And it's not any Queensland maple tree, and it's not any Brazilian mahogany tree. So we weigh them. I weigh them to make sure the block weight is just right. And it helps with the resonance. And then we chamber out all of that, and then leave 10 mil of solid timber around the outside. And I tried different chambering options and putting, you know, cavities here, and they all sort of changed certain things. And one would make it too woody, one would make it too... the tone would be slightly thinner, and I've got a really good bunch of core local musicians that I just go, here, come into the workshop, I won't tell you what's in it, play it, tell me what you think. And they go, ooh, yeah, I like this, or I don't like that, or and then the cap on top, I could show you photos of this, it's like remarkably figured Tasmanian blackwood. And it was just what I had, and people were like, you can't go and paint that. And
that's a tough call.
And it's got this beautiful white sap line, it's all fiddleback, but you know, we trialled it at 3 mil, then we trialled it at 4 mil, and then once I got to a particular thickness, I was like, okay, this has got just the right amount of kind of Les Paul push and grunt behind it, with just the right amount of airiness to make it a little bit woody and open. So, so that's kind of that set neck. The pickups, I tried Lolas, I tried Seymour Duncan, I tried lots of them, and they were all good in their own right. And again, tone subjective. So, but I wanted to work with a company that, again, I find that when you work with people that do one thing and do one thing well, so we came across these guys in the United States called Lambertons, and he's new. He's sort of starting out new.
So is that Lamberton or Lamberton?
Lambertons, so Lamb, you can Ertons, so Lambertons. And he told me about these filter covered things. I was like, man, it's going to suit the vibe, and I told him what I wanted and the values that I wanted. And when I started making electric guitars, it was all about, I'm playing at rock bass, it was all about high gain, all this shit. But you eventually go, I've just sapped all the tone out of my guitar, basically.
Well, you wonder where the notes are in your chord.
Yeah, and I'm not that good at controlling distortion, so I'm that guy. And what I learned through talking to him and talking to other great pickup makers is that it's actually kind of not what you want. You want something that's got, depending on the amp that you're working with, something that gives you very clean headroom. And I don't mean like ice picky clean, I just mean full warm clarity, that the notes don't let go too soon. And that has a lot to do with the wiring as well. So the back is actually an Alnico 8.
Right.
And the front's an Alnico 5, and they're underwound.
Yep.
They're completely underwound, and you have a shred on it in a minute. Talking about the wiring, like it had probably disgust most people if you knew what was actually in a custom shop, you know, from, I won't say what other companies, but they use cheap components. That's my mobile phone.
I use that sound every now and then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I was like, hang on, I'll put my phone on silent.
So what's in here, we were working with Emerson as a company, and I love their products. And, you know, sort of thought, well, what have they got? And so this particular wiring harness is what's in a I think it's your $12,000 plus PRSs. So it's really responsive. It's got a big bumblebee in it. It's really simple. We wanted one volume, one tone. Again, I survey a lot of players who play Les Pauls. What do you do? Everything's on 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? So I wanted something that, right down to where the position of it is, that you can volume ride a bit. And, the difference between playing at 6 is clean, and then 7 is, it's getting hairy, and then, 9's all out warfare. So you're doing that. Roller bearing bridges, so all Godo stuff. Again, these are just remarkable for kicking.
They're great. I've used those on a few guitars.
And again, that was one of those upgrades.
I often swap them out. Yeah.
That we put on people's guitars. It's like, well, why don't I just stick one on from the get-go? I was sick of breaking strings on other guitars. So, we do that. All really quality chrome wear. We've got the frets are a product made by T.A.G.S. They're very, very hard and dense, and right down to, we make sure that we glue every single fret in place. There's no dead spots. You go up and tap, the notes are clear and ring true. Godo machine heads, do a volute. So again, a little bit extra strength in case they go on stage, because they are a one-piece neck.
I like that you went with the Ivoroid.
Yeah.
Is it Ivoroid? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Like that kind
of, it's I don't know. I just kind of thought it suited the instrument.
Yeah. It just carries it through.
And then the idea behind this is that this is all actually connected via one DC connector, like a pedal. And so, moving forward, we'll have that scratch guard loaded. And it'll be loaded with P90s or a humbucker and a single coil or whatever. And you as a player,
just swap it out as
you've got the carriage, and you just go one clip, bang, just let go of those screws, and then they
fantastic.
go.
So I'm a Gretsch nut.
Yeah. Okay.
I've owned like I had a 59 Gretsch, which was just why I sold it. I don't know, but
probably would have been amazing.
And it kind of this kind of harks that their baritone kind of vibe. And I'm a Italian nut. So those are the two, for me. I mean, I was like most, coming through the 80s and 90s, I was all about the shred, the Ibanez, all that kind of stuff. We've been there, done that, threw them all away. Came back to what was simple. Tally is usually what I go to most of the time.
Okay.
And so it is that thing, one volume, one tone. I like a pickup that is really nice and clear, that you can, if you want, you got distortion pedals. You can buy distortion pedals.
Well, that's right.
You can't buy clean pedals.
Pedals these days are amazing. And the feedback we've got from this, and I mean, you be the judge of that, but is that people are ringing me and saying, I'm pulling strap tones. How is that possible out of a humbucking pickup? And then it's the clarity of what's going on. So it's got a really kind of broad range. Selfishly, I built this for me. And then other people are like, I sort of gig and they go, can we get one? And they're quite...
Which is what that is.
This is a custom order for a guy, so that one's sold as well.
Has it got a slight metal flake through it?
No. Oh, yes. Okay. He's a mad Holden fan, so that's actually Voodoo Blue.
Voodoo Blue.
Right. From his Holden.
Yeah, cool.
And these are obviously like Marshall amp knobs, just to try and sort of finish it off a little bit of. But they're time consuming to make because of the way I make them. Yeah. So I think we retail them for about $4,500, which is, I think, pretty reasonable if you're in the market for like a solid like Les Paul or whatever. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
You put it in your hands.
Now these are a nitro finish too, aren't they?
All nitro. I do all my guitars in nitro.
You can smell it.
Yeah. Well, this one's a bit beaten up. This one's been around the block for There's probably, I didn't show you the museum of these. There's like 6 prototypes before this. So they're all up the back, and I might have just changed something slightly, or a neck profile, or. So
even unplugged, man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's got a nice body resonance to it too.
I like its weight. It's nice and balanced.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this one, for this particular guy, he owns quite a large acreage, and he wanted to match the timbers that were on his property. So I've actually capped this with camphor laurel, and this one's lighter and a little bit more woodier and resonant sort of thing.
Same pickup, same
everything's
specs.
the same, but you'd be quite surprised to hear what that does. And this is a perfect example of, you've got to get the timbers right from cutting, drying, all the way through. So it's not that this is, but it is different to that. It's probably got a little bit more bark to it, a little bit more top end. I mean, the Blackwood for me is about right. It's about the right cap.
I think as soon as you're dealing with anything that has chambers, it's all going to come down to the wood. You know, there'd be argument over solid body guitars, and I know some like guys like Rod and the Queen of slider pickups, and a few other pickup makers and stuff will all say, well, it's about this contact point and that contact point and the magnets in the middle. So,
look, I used to think like that until I think it was a quote I read from I think it was the late Bill Collings. I think he said I think I read somewhere he was talking about. He was an acoustic guitar maker, and he and I'm sure if I've got this wrong, someone will correct me. I'm sure it was Bill Collings, and he said basically, I made guitars for ages, and someone said you should build electric guitars, and he went, well, how hard can it be? It's a chopping block and pickups. Get the pickups right. And his advice was he couldn't have been more wrong. And he actually, and that's what I read that about 4 or 5 years ago. And my ears pricked up and went, again, don't be so naive to think that maybe I've got it wrong and other people can prove me wrong. But what I've certainly learned is get everything else the same, and you change those timbers, you've changed it. And whether that's a feel thing, because your brain's connected to your fingers, and it doesn't really matter what it is, but there is definitely a change. And I can categorically tell you that where we started with that to where I've got it today is vastly different. And all I've done is change. Even the back of the guitar, we moved from being about 8mm thick to about 4.5 or somewhere. That's about the thickness of the back now. Right. And it's done something. It's kind of pushed the mid. It's done this just kind of remarkable thing. Now, am I getting the pickups wide and weighed and kept, to the same value every time? Well, we think so.
Well, and if they're hand wound, you can. There's always going to be slight.
That's right.
Changes, which is great because that's that's what again. Like
but my advice, and I even say, go in here yesterday in the shop with guitars. He's like, I really love that guitar. I'm not ready to buy it yet. Can you build me one in 6 months' time, and will it sound like that? And I'm like, the honest answer I can give you is whether you buy one of my guitars or somebody else's. If you come across something that you absolutely love when you play it, buy it. Yep. Because I can control, I reckon, 90, maybe 95%, maybe. I think it's probably closer to about 90% through all my techniques and measuring and weighing all the rest of it. There's some magic in there. That's a perception thing based on the way the human body just reacts to a colour they're looking at or whatever. So, mate, if you come across something magic, buy it. And that doesn't mean that we can't, because we send custom guitars. That's gone shipped, worldwide in terms of orders, and we get no complaints. But when if you were to play those two guitars, there'd be minute differences between them, and eventually you'd go. And we see this too. You love the sound of the black one, because I did a little video on Instagram with young Harry Hart, who plays my guitars, and he's got a white one. And we were like, what sounds better, the black or the white? And people were choosing by the colour, not by the tone. Right. So, and you'll know yourself, like, you got this thing, like that one's like a dirty khaki shit green, and you love black. That thing sounds incredible. But chances are you'll still buy the black one because you want to look cool. Because you want to look cool on stage, and you want to, if it looks good and makes you feel good, then you'll probably sacrifice a little bit of that tone. You'll find it somewhere else in a setting. Yeah, it's the most common thing I've had with people I've interviewed is people buy with their eyes or they listen with their eyes. Yeah. If they're at a gig, he's a great guitar player because that guitar's cool. Might be playing Wonderwall all night, but yeah. Man, I'm gonna we'll have a quick plug up of this. Have a black. And I'm going to have to make a track soon because I've got to go to this wedding rehearsal. Yeah. Which is why I'm up in Queensland. It's such a bonus to be able to steal your time. Oh, my pleasure. Because I know you could be making money right now. And I know that by you sitting here talking to me means you're not. It's all part of it, mate. So I'm stoked. Thanks for. I respect that, but it's something that means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And thank you. My pleasure. And it's been just cool hanging out. I'm gonna have a quick fang of that. Yeah. And then I better scoot. No worries. Let's get it happening. Now, do you normally go on channel 2 or channel 1? Oh, I'll just go with whatever's going. I'll see what you mean by that little jump. That's sensitive as in the tone too. If you're on 1 on your tone, you get the wool, and if you're on, so you can go from, just explore it is what I'd say.
boost you get from it. Just bang, there's your solo, off that solo. And it's for those who can't see it at home, that is literally like going from 9 to 10, like just that amount of movement.
Like I'll just crank that amp a little more. You start at one end of the spectrum, and then just on your bridge or something, and then you roll it in, you'll hear it get hairier.
Beast. Oh man.
There you go.
That is gorgeous.
The Bentley.